Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Can Your Business Survive an Email Spoofing Attack? Brought to you by Inceptus Cybersecurity. This is one of an ongoing series of webinars in the cybersecurity field. Today, we'll be talking about email spoofing and how to prevent against it. Let's start with some introductions first. My name is Bill Bridges. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Inceptus Cybersecurity. And joining me today, our president and CEO, John Schlager. John, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I have been in cybersecurity and in technology a lot longer than I even care to admit, over 30 years. John, why don't you give us a little bit of rundown of your background?
I too as well been in this for a very long game now. So 30 years now in cybersecurity. I started my career. I work for a company called US Internetworking. We were one of the world's first application service providers that became known as software as a service back in the late 90s, early 2000s. After that, I was the EPA's Criminal Investigation Division's Information Security Officer. I was there around hardening and securing the Criminal Investigation Division of the EPA. After that, I went to work for Booz Allen Hamilton at the National Security Agency. I was a consultant there on both sides of the house within the intelligence community. I worked with a group of threat hunters that would go around and find advanced persistent threats and federated data stores of the U.S. government. I went to become the Chief Information Security Officer for the United States Capitol Police, took a failing program, turned it into a model for the legislative branch of the U.S. government. And I started a company prior to Inceptus called Oxford Solutions, which through venture capital funding became Scout Cybersecurity, which is where we had an extended detection and response platform that we sold to Barracuda in 2018. I started Inceptus that year to fill in those gaps to what we were trying to build at Scout prior, but XDR took over. So appreciate that, and here we are with Inceptus. So
there we are. Great experience and great leadership through both the provider side of cybersecurity services, as well as on the the consumer side, having lived what many of our clients and prospective clients are going through today. So a great background for that.
Yeah, absolute transition shock going from government space into the commercial sector. So
I am sure, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And we've got clients on both sides, right? Both the government side as well as private industry. So
we do.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking. It's kind of an ebb and flow discussion here we've got, but we're going to talk about the basics of email spoofing, what it is. We're going to talk about how to identify it, several different ways, why it matters to business, what's at stake here, and then finally, and most importantly, perhaps, is how to protect ourselves, our organizations, against email spoofing. Does that sound good for you?
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
Great. Well, why don't we start off then at the beginning of what is email spoofing? Can you kind of run down both a layman's term and perhaps maybe some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So email spoofing is a technique, essentially, that's usually used within phishing scams. So it's where a hacker, sends emails with the fake sender address, right, to trick recipients into thinking that the email came from a trusted source. So usually it's utilized in spear phishing techniques where it's like a CEO or someone faking that that's who they are to send that email to a subordinate and believe that it's them, and usually add a bunch of things inside of it to do a sense of priority. But it's spoofing is the act of disguising the sender's identity in an email. Broader top tactic of that though is phishing. Essentially it's just trying to deceive the person into doing something, whatever it is that their ultimate goal is, whether it's credential harvesting or something else. So it makes the email actually appear legitimate to the user, and maybe there's subtle nuances that we'll discuss further, but you don't really pay attention because it's human nature. So
So the cyber criminal can be pretending to be someone internal, right? That they're not, or perhaps external as well, right?
Absolutely. It can be either both ways.
Right. And I'm sure, and this is getting a little bit off topic, but I think it fits in here. This is part of, or the solution here is going to be part of a robust user training program, right? I mean, how to identify at the front end those emails that do get through, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Security awareness training and those sorts of things are actually fundamental. That's your last chance, for somebody to spot something bad that's happening. And that's why, we try to train users and have these types of webinars to make it more noticeable and apparent to people that they have to be very careful handling those emails, because the risks and issues that come from it could be detrimental to the business.
Sure, sure. Generally, if it looks fake or looks fishy, it probably is, right?
Should always report it. Err on the side of that and be, try to be, less
Right,
enthusiastic at clicking links, I should say. So,
right. At this point, do you want to share, just before we get into the details, any specific stories that you might have about email spoofing that might have been successful, either personally or
absolutely.
those that might have been in the news?
There have been quite a few phishing attacks, and most attacks that we see kind of start from phishing or some type of email spoofing. But, we see it a lot. It started 20 years ago with email spoofing, where they're saying they're the CEO and there's an urgency to send wire transfers. Probably one of the most common and most successful phishing techniques. Here we are 20 years later, 2024, and that's still happening today. We've actually just got a customer the other week because of that specifically. Their email system was compromised somehow, and they spoofed an email from the CEO and sent that email. They wire transferred that over, thinking that there was that, once again, sense of urgency to that.
Hmm.
So, the transfer happened. They weren't able to get any of the money back. So now they are an FPI statistic.
Right, right. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, it's even getting harder to recognize some of these things, right?
I would believe it's going to get way worse. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Even email, I mean, not email, telephone spoofing. There's whole new companies that are coming out now around AI to prevent spoofing of people,
Right.
and illegitimate.
Video.
We just had a story where a company was having their board of directors meeting. The treasurer was on there. The CFO was unable to make it, but they hid the emails because they controlled his email. Once they hid his emails, they faked their entire way into the Teams meeting where they had an individual that looked and acted and talked like that person, to where they made them transfer a big amount. I think it was
Right.
$20 million, but I'm not really sure.
That's
So.
crazy. Well, back to email spoofing. So what does email spoofing focus on?
And we hit on it earlier. Essentially, it's just identity masking at its best. Making sure, trying to fake someone into believing that that sender is who they say they are, even though it isn't. They're going to manipulate, especially within email spoofing. They'll manipulate those email headers, so that we'll forget that sender's address and add that fake address. There's always ways to tell where it comes from, and because the header is separated from the body of the email, some of that
Right.
stuff in the body, like the friendly name, which is where we get tricked a lot, where it
Sure.
doesn't actually match the user where it came from's name. So
Right.
trying to just fake out that individual is the goal here, is to mask their identity essentially.
Right. As we get a little bit more technical, how does it work?
So yeah, absolutely. Email protocols, really can authenticate the source of an email. So hackers change or manipulate that header information, like I was
Hmm.
talking about, to make it look like it comes from that legitimate sender. So, they're conducted using SMTP, or simple mail transfer protocol, which gives it that ability. And they all use this, and there is this capability which they're trying to wane away from and make it so it's more difficult to use SMTP, and those sorts of things. But, in that there's certain, paths and certain areas where you can add information, such as like the from, like who it's from, the reply to, and the return path fields in those can be manipulated. So, this is why this has evolved,
Right.
with those things that they're separated from the body of the message, like I said. So, it's a little bit more difficult for email protection systems to detect that difference, because they're really looking at the header information and not really at the body of the email.
Right. So in SMTP, that's the most commonly used system, right? Outlook, Gmail, etc.
Well, I mean, they're moving away from that particular protocol, but it
Hmm.
absolutely is still the base. MX records, all those things still send and receive through SMTP.
Right.
Port 25, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So you imagine there's some kids sitting in their parents' basement doing this all the time, but it's really not, right? What are the hackers' goals? Who are they, and what are their goals?
Well, the hackers could be anybody, whether it's some advanced persistent threat, a foreign nation state, a foreign government, they're going to have to be really tricky in how they try to manipulate and send emails, to those things. But, the script kiddies, like you're talking about, the people in the parent's basement can easily do that, or do this. They find an open SMTP relay on the internet, they can spoof away,
Right.
and that was kind of been the problem for the longest time now, until these new technologies came up that we're going to talk about here in a bit. But, their total goal here is, probably three major things. They want you to either download some malicious software, they want you to send money somewhere, or, they want to disclose personal information or financial information, some PII that they're trying to get from you, whether it's a credential, social security number, those sorts of things. These spoofing attacks can, that's kind of what they're trying to do, is like we said earlier, is to get that user to do something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We're going to show some examples, I think. Do you have a slide or something you want to show at this point?
oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let's show an example of one. So here's an example. This is from CrowdStrike, which thank you, CrowdStrike, for allowing me to use this from your website. But
Hmm.
this is you can notice here little things that you want to like pay attention to whenever you look at an email that comes in, whether it's on your phone or if it's in that email itself. There's subtle nuances sometimes. Like you'll see spelling mistakes and subject lines. Hackers maybe from a foreign country, using Google Translate or something like that to translate that message to English or whatever
Hmm.
languages that they're targeting. So there might be something that doesn't work. The vernacular is wrong, that kind of stuff. Another thing to look at would be the incorrect email here. And it goes back. See the thing on the left, that's the friendly name that we talk about. It says
Right.
Microsoft, Office team, but it's actually the incorrect email on that side would be like MS Online Services at Microsoft.co. It's not .com. So
Right.
something to look for. They drop the M off of that one there. Attention grabbers, they want something and they want a sense of urgency in there, or some until you verify your account, trying to make it sound like everything is going to stop and decease. They're playing on our internal, our needs and wants and want us to do something. And that's,
Hmm.
we want to people please and that sort of stuff. So if there's something wrong, we want to fix it. It's kind of built into us, and that's what they want to play off. Also, too, the attacker hides, malicious links behind buttons, accept invitation, those sorts of things. Click here to look at that. A quick way to check those is to like right click on it and see where it goes to. Make sure it's going to Microsoft, and not some other site.
And
That's a
Microsoft.com, like you said, it could be masked all the way down to the last letter, right?
absolutely. And you got
Right.
to pay really good attention to where it's taking you to, those sorts of things. Some email programs will do hyperlink, they'll change that so it goes through a proxy. So you don't actually go to the site. So there's certain
Uh-huh.
email security programs that do things to protect against these issues. It's that cat and mouse game. As the hackers start using something, we come up ways to detect and prevent,
Right.
those types of attacks. So it's constantly that cat and mouse game. So these have evolved over time, and these types
Right.
of emails and how they do that. So
So it's in a real world analogy, it's like someone calling from a number that looks like your bank, pretending to be your bank. Might know perhaps some level of maybe through social engineering enough about you to make you think that it's your bank, and all really just calling to get your account details, get your passwords, get something else, right?
absolutely, absolutely. Let me show this one too. Let's look at a header. I've actually had a header too from an email. So this is kind of generically done, and these are
Hmm.
kind of already broken out. This is not how an email header would look in if you looked at it natively. It doesn't. This is kind of separated to make it easier to read here. Now, here's one that we were talking about. This would be a spear phishing attempt, right? See the from down here that's highlighted. It
Yeah.
says CEO at mycompany.com. It's
Hmm.
sending it to the CFO. The subject is, are you available? You can see where it was and what time, date, and look at the length. and down there, and it says, "Are you available to send a wire transfer today? Please send this money to an account listed below." But if we look all the way at the top, the return path is root@nerdsec.us,
Yep.
and it's apparently to this guy at yahoo.com. So those are, that's not a proper domain,
Sure.
associated with your account. So that's them trying to spoof. That friendly name shows up down here. You think it's the CEO at your company, but it's actually not.
Do you remember just a couple of weeks ago, I sent you a text that I'd received from an unknown number, getting a little off subject, but it's similar, right? Same kind of thing. And it asked me, he said, "Now keep this on the down low, but I need you to do me something." It's like a Saturday morning, remember? And I
Yeah, it
sent
was
this to
from
you.
me.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
supposedly
Yeah,
from
yeah.
you, right? Saying I need you to do something confidential, keep it under your hat. And so from a social engineering perspective, you might get something in the email same kind of way. Hey, we're doing something internal that might be a little bit confidential, right? So don't tell anybody, don't reach out to anybody. They're wanting you to not investigate further with the normal training methods of be suspicious and double check with the sender, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And that just happened to us, really. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So back on subject here, why does it matter for business? I mean, what's going on here? Maybe some statistics
Oh yeah,
of how
we
big
have
the
a lot.
problem is.
We have a lot actually, and it's kind of crazy because we have some from a few years ago that we have, and some from
Mhm.
now, but there's absolutely been an increase in all of these types of attacks. Phishing right now is the most common type of cybercrime, and it's 90% of cyber attacks begin with some sort of email attack against an organization. There's only a few ways to get in and out of an organization, and we've done a great job at protecting those, and email and that is one specific way that we actually send and receive files back and forth to each other. The
Mhm.
other side of that house, is the internet and the web. So there's other techniques for them to do that. Like those links go to malicious servers that are out there that are in those emails and, those types of things. So, hyper important, that this is one of the main ways, and this is the main way that we communicate to the internet. So this is why it's one of the biggest problems that we
Right.
face. So here's one that I was going to talk about too. This is last year. Attacks happened every 37 seconds. This was actually in 2022. Every
Hmm.
37 seconds, an attack happened. In 2023, it's every 11 seconds. So it's tripled, in the amount there.
And I bet it's
2023,
2024 and 25, it's going to even be quicker. With
yeah,
machine learning,
absolutely.
artificial intelligence, the bad guys,
Geopolitical issues that we're facing right now with,
yeah, the bad guys
Russia
have
and
better tools
China.
than we have sometimes, it seems like.
And they have all the tools that we have, so we have to
Right.
think of that too.
Right.
So they're testing against our EDRs, all of those different products. Well, these hackers have them too. If we can get them, they can get them. So
Right.
we have to think of that they're testing their products, they're looking for vulnerabilities, all these things that we constantly say in cybersecurity. You have to do them now. And now it's a battlefield out there now, and there's no prisoners. They want your money, they want your financial information, they want you
Right.
to participate in whatever they're trying to do. So
And you mentioned that 90% of cyber attacks begin with this email spoofing, right? And it's because, and we've mentioned at the top of the hour, unfortunately, the users in our companies, our organizations, are the weak links. It's the humans are going to be the weak link here, and so training and these tools that we're discussing today are so critical.
absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. There, I just got to say a couple more of these though. We have quite a few of them on here, but these are kind of striking too. It's that in 2023 there were 1.76 billion phishing emails sent. That's a 51% increase from
Mm.
2022. And 25, here's something too around employee training, because you've said this kind of a few times here, is that even if you start like a security awareness training program and then you start doing phishing attacks and faux phishing attacks and those sorts of things, 25% of employees will click on and open phishing emails. 11% will click on them. Sorry. So 25% of employees will open them, 11% will click on those malicious links. So that's what you're combating. And that's what security
Right.
awareness training does. And you can measure that ROI by seeing how fewer people click on those links over time. And you've seen it within our own organization, Bill. You
Sure.
you fall You fallen for a faux phishing attack before?
It was
So,
part of our ongoing training. I did once, yeah. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, 11% is a big number, but it's even bigger when you say 11% of 1.76 billion phishing emails a year.
That's a big number of people clicking links, right?
Yes,
It's kind
right.
of crazy. And if you don't have those right protections in place or that right patch level or, something you didn't do right on your machine,
Hmm.
you're going to fall victim to it. So,
Yeah. What are some common words that you might see that a user might see when these emails are coming in?
oh yeah, any of those urgency words, that you would think of, important, attention, urgent, important update, you know, the boss is coming, something like that,
Right,
especially if it's an internal one, those types of things. So,
right.
kind of crazy. But and one more thing too is where all of these are coming from? A 1/5 of all phishing emails come from one country to the United States. Do you know where that is, Bill?
I would say Russia or China.
Absolutely, Russia.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
now us throwing missiles into Russia, that number is probably going to get way higher. So,
Yeah,
prepare, prepare, right?
yeah, yeah. I think you had another well-known incident involving email spoofing or phishing that has gone wrong. You want to share that with us?
Yeah, like one of the biggest that's probably ever happened. And, I think this is like between 2013 and 2015. It's a great thing because he not only spoofed emails, essentially, he spoofed a company, he spoofed contracts, like everything, and actually duped them into so much he extorted $100 million out of two companies, and those are Google and Facebook.
Oh my
It's known as the
goodness.
$100 million phishing scam, because he had a fake company. He impersonated a supplier, successfully, tricked both of those tech giants into transferring these huge amounts of money through fraudulent invoices,
Yeah.
and a combined loss of $100 million. So that's probably one of the best. And I wish I had an example of the email. I couldn't find any out there that he did, but he spoofed everything, which
Yeah.
is down the line, nothing was real. So pretty interesting. I think that it was I cannot say his name. I would just totally destroy it. It's like Evaldis Rimasakis, Saskas, something like that. So
So, yeah.
it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So
Yeah. You can
amazing.
Google him. Yeah, it comes up, right?
But yeah, but most of
Yeah.
these attacks, they all stem from spear phishing or some sort of phishing attack. You click a link, those types of things. And, attackers, especially Russian attackers now, are focusing on small office, home office users because a
Hmm.
lot of these companies are now implementing these different technologies, these different ways
Sure.
to do business, how they send email. And, a lot of personal home users think of it as, oh, that's what happens at work. I don't need to do that. But now these Russians and these Chinese, these advanced persistent threats are actually
Right.
utilizing machines within our own country to attack our infrastructure, to attack, companies to get into their Microsoft 365 accounts, those sorts of things. So
Yeah. You said the Google and Facebook one were 2013, 2015 timeframe. And I know that the technology being implemented by big enterprises, of course, is improved greatly. And you just said it's the home office, it's the smaller SMB market now. We in this market, we're the low-hanging fruit nowadays for those Russian hackers, right?
absolutely. Not only for proxying through to attacks, but there's
Hmm.
still lucrative attacks within these companies.
Sure.
We see it, I see it all the time. Landscaping companies, doctors' offices, whether it's through ransomware extortion or through, like these types of means through sending transferring money. It happens often even to these
Hmm.
smaller organizations. Everyone needs to be aware of it, especially the SMBs. And because there's usually a smaller group, if they get an email from their boss, they're usually going to act on it because it did come from it. And they're not paying attention or they don't have the technologies to protect against these type of attacks.
Yeah.
There's a thing called the cyber poverty line that's out there now, and it's
Hmm.
cyber can be expensive and there's no real ROI on it. So for years, it's kind of taken a back door, to spending within organizations. And that's kind of they look at it as an insurance and it's not
Right.
insurance. It's actually a protective measure. It's like security guards. People are going to
Hmm.
hate me for saying that out there, but we're actually actively blocking and protecting an organization from those bad things as well as, all those other types of activities. So
And in many industries, with regulation now, it's required, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you might be regulated and not even know it, especially with privacy laws that are popping up. If you're
Hmm.
keeping, the names of people or, from a California, New York, you're collecting information from a European citizen, We have a lot of people here in Florida that come from other countries and live and own houses down here. And, they have their data inside of utility commissions, inside of all of these places. And a lot of these city
Mhm.
governments, small governments, they don't even follow GDPR regulation. So there could be issues with that if European citizen privacy information gets extorted. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
big deal that a lot of people don't know, but you know,
So, I mean, they're acquiring sensitive information that we've talked about. They want to take over online accounts and give them access, like you said, to your login credentials. Distributing malware. What kind of malware are we talking about here? I mean, just ransomware as well as what?
all kinds, command and control type stuff, Trojan horses, that's a big key, and a lot of APTs use that because it's a way for them to put an application that runs and hides within there, it lives off the land, so it doesn't raise a lot of concern within an infrastructure, and they use it to remotely connect and control that environment. Whether they
Hmm.
want to, attack, put more Easter eggs out there, more command and control. Once they're in, they have that beachhead, they can spread, invade, look around, see what there is, and really live off the land to create havoc later down the road. Maybe
Right.
they're not even the ones that are going to do the attack. Maybe they just want to
Right.
get in, get that, and they sell it to somebody
Sell it on
else,
the
to
dark
another
web.
hacker.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And
Big
then it's
market.
distributed to lots of people, right? Bad actors.
Absolutely. Ransomware as a service, command and control as a service. You can actually go out there and buy botnets and those types of things that people control to do with you what you will,
Yep.
send
And
attacks, whatever.
perpetuating the problem here. That malware could be turning your computer into a zombie, right? It could be
Absolutely.
right.
And if there's ever a war and there's a fire sale where something's going to happen and we start being attacked, they could go after and utilize that infrastructure that they captured, to denial of service, whatever they're
Yeah.
trying to do. So,
I was getting off subject here a little bit. I was a big fan of the Terminator series, right? And in the third one, they reveal that the network that they're trying to fight
Skynet,
against, Skynet, is not a single computer. It's a distributed network of zombie or taken over computers, right? In people's homes, businesses.
absolutely. It's
It's
always AI and machines
stranger
that
than
take us down.
fiction, right?
Right.
Art is manipulating or predicting the future sometimes. That was back in the 80s and 90s, and who
Yeah.
knew, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dune, the whole concept of the movie Dune is based on an apocalypse from the machines taking over and enslaving humans. So,
right.
same thing.
Yeah. So, how many people do you think out there really know what some of the security protocols are, SPF and DKIM and the like? Can we begin a little bit more technical discussion here about how do we protect ourselves against email spoofing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what you just said exactly. SPF, DMARC, and DKIM are major advancements in email spoofing attack mitigation. So
Hmm.
these three things are what is going to be a game changer, and it helps email security solutions in making decisions about, emails that are coming through. These are coming out of a, a standard and a basis that's going around, and the big companies, Google, Microsoft, they are starting to deny emails based on if you're not signing them. So if you're not using DKIM and signing emails, they're going to deny those emails, thinking that they're hacked or spoofed, and these are put in
Hmm.
place to defend about all those things that we were talking about. So, this is the number one communication tool globally. This is how we communicate pretty much. It's completely destroyed the mail system. My son's in the Air Force. We just write letters now, and it's kind of funny because it's so nostalgic that we might just
Hmm.
keep it going and doing it because it's different, right? And it's secure. Still, you never know your email could be read, right? So organizations rely on this heavily, right? And even though there's a popularity rise in instant messenger and Teams and those sorts of things, email is still and will be the way that we communicate and do business moving
Sure.
forward. All of our systems communicate and utilize it to send out reports and things automatically. So it'll be really tough for us to get away and try to use a different technology because it is so ingrained right now. So
Right. So DKIM, SPF, DMARC, this is email authentication. Is that what we're talking about?
absolutely. It's exactly what it is. It's trying to get rid of those things, all those problems that came out of spoofing, are you are who you say you are,
Hmm.
those types of things is exactly what this does. So it is essentially at its heart an email authentication solution that can be checked globally by any other system, through DNS, essentially through a domain name service. So you can set up DNS records that tell all these different things that'll help your organization, prove that they are who they say they are, and it's your email. So if
Right.
you send an email and somebody from another random SMTP server sends an email, if it fails sender policy framework and the domain key identifier stuff, it'll fail that email essentially. So that's what this is trying to do. Prevent spoofing.
Essentially a gatekeeper in the cloud, right? Watching emails going back and forth and making sure that the senders are who they say they are.
Absolutely. And as your machine systems get these,
Hmm.
requests, they can check in DNS and say, hey, this person is who they say they are. They've sent an email to me that's been signed with a public key, or their public keys in DNS. They've signed it with that private. It works. We can see that kind of thing. So now we know that that email was who they say they are, so these three different, technologies kind of work together in synchronous to help prevent those types of email spoofing attacks. So
So can we get down in the weeds just a little bit and demystify maybe SPF, DKIM,
sure.
DMARC? What are they and what do they stand for? I know we have so many acronyms in our business, right? Can we go through that a little bit and make sense of it all?
Absolutely. Let's talk about SPF first, right? Sender
Right.
Policy Framework was what that is. So it's a way for authentication essentially to prove that this email came from a system that's allowed to send email from that system.
Okay.
So they are written in DNS to show either a domain name, a URL, of a particular system, whether it's like mail.inceptasecure.com or it's an IP address of that particular public email, server that's out there. Now it's allowed to send it. So we would put a bunch of a DNS record that has an SPF at the front that shows all of those systems that are allowed to send it from them. And this is what we see a lot in the small business community as an issue. A lot of them don't know this or understand this yet. So that's kind of why we wanted to do this webinar. But this like if you send out as constant contact or you use arc or what do we use for oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, but we use all these different products, right? And
Hmm.
they can send email as us with our domain, like ours, inceptasecure.com.
Right.
So
Okay.
what we do with that is we allow in this DNS record, we show what servers are actually allowed to send. You know what I mean? So it ensures that emails are allowed from that domain or IP address. So
Right. All right. And how about DKIM?
So DKIM is a way for emails to sign and add cryptographic signatures, to verify the authenticity of the email, right?
Hmm.
So what that does is it attaches that it's private key to that email when it sends. We put the public key out on the DNS once again that shows that DKIM selector record.
Right.
There's usually two that come from each email system, that we would put out there that allows that email signature so absolutely that digital signature that's been added to that message header is who that person says it is because it matches. So that ensures your emails are trusted and not marked as spam, essentially. So because if it doesn't pass DKIM, it's getting shut down. And that's what Google and Hotmail, it doesn't even exist anymore.
So
But
it gets delivered
Microsoft,
to a spam folder. Is that where it ends up going?
it could go into quarantine. It might not. It might be completely rejected by the email system. So where it
Okay.
wouldn't even, it'll just drop it and say it's not allowed and just it dies in darkness, essentially.
So it helps the email providers confirm that the emails are really from who they say they are.
Absolutely. And that's its
Perfect.
one goal. And that's DKIM's responsibility. And it does that cryptographically with that key.
All right. So we've hit SPF and DKIM. Next is DMARC. What does DMARC stand for?
DMARC's a little different. So that's domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance. So once again, this is part of the technology around authentication. It provides policy and reporting mechanisms for both DKIM and SPF. So as you send emails, and we were talking about, as I'm the sender of that email, I can see failures or
Hmm.
allows, based on that information. So DMARC is a DNS record that we put out there that shows if it's spam or if it's whatever that issue is that gets triggered, it'll send it to the original domain so I know that it's been dropped, and it gives me feedback within that so I could show, hey, this was allowed, denied, and why it wasn't. So this is kind of a good way to tune your SPF records sometimes, those sorts of things, like especially if you're sending it and you see the failure, you can add that IP address in there or whatever to make it more, legitimate, and have
Right.
more things like that. So
Almost like community crowdsourcing information about bad actors and good actors out there, right?
yeah, absolutely. So, and it just sends that email too, so it just sends that information from the email system. We get hundreds a day based on the emails that we go. You might get a
Right.
bunch of DMARC responses back to your domain, and you put in the email address where you want it to send it to, spam at, we have another one too
Right.
out there. So.
So DKIM, SPF, now DMARC, how do they all differ again, and how we put them together to really help solve the whole email spoofing problem?
Okay, so DKIM uses cryptographic signatures to verify the authenticity of the email. It
Right.
adds a digital signature to the message header that the recipient's email service server can verify through DNS, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helps prevent email spoofing and phishing attacks by ensuring that the email message has not been tampered with in transit because it has a key on it and knows. And it can be used to verify the integrity of the message content and to authenticate that sender's domain, essentially. So.
Got it.
SPF now, that's a little different. That's a DNS record to verify which IP addresses are authorized to send emails right
Mm-hmm.
on the particular domain. So if it's Incepta Secure as your root DNS record, you have all these things that are allowed to send, and you have that SPF record, and that shows who's allowed to send it. That helps prevent email spoofing and phishing attacks by ensuring that email message is coming from an authorized sender, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
an IP address or domain. And this can help prevent email messages from being marked as spam, right, or rejected by the recipient's email server. And that's what I was talking about, is that recipient server literally will just stop it. You won't even see remnants of it unless you can see the base, Exchange Online or Gmail server. You can actually see those particular emails and why they were dropped. So
Right.
that's the thing. And
And
then
where?
the last
Yeah.
part of this triad is the DMARC, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
provides policy and reporting mechanisms for DKIM and SPF. So if there's something that gets violated, there's a way for the root domain to know that something is happening. And it helps ensure that messages are only accepted if they meet those authentication policies, that we
Mm-hmm.
set forth in SPM and DMARC, and by that specific domain. And this helps prevent email spoofing and phishing attacks as well, because it sends that email so actually you're being attacked because you're going to get information from that email server,
Right. And SPF and DKIM and DMARC, where are they stored again? How's this
all in
all?
DNS.
Okay.
Every single one of these guys is in DNS, which makes it
Right.
pretty easy to show. And here, I'll bring up an example of that real quick. So here is ours. These are publicly available, and I'll show you guys how to use them right after this too. But here's our SPF record right here. So this is
Right.
how it comes out, and we can verify this through a tool that's out on the internet called mxtoolbox.com. And I'll show you guys that here in a second. But these are the SPF1 record is what I'm talking about, and you can see these includes. So include autotask.net. That's our ticketing system, that we use
Mm-hmm.
internally for our managed security service. So is that email sends as Incept is secure, they're allowed because they're in here. You know, Outlook.com, Constant Contact, Atlassian, different types of places that we use to do that type of stuff. And those are allowed to send email as inceptisecure.com. Down here, the next one is the DMARC record in here, and you can see these all mean a bunch of different things, and there's a whole bunch of sites out there on the internet to try to figure out how you want to do it. But this
Mm-hmm.
shows what to do with those emails. We want them to go to quarantine. So that's that first statement there. It sends all of our emails into quarantine that fail any of these. And if it's where to send them to, if it's a DMARC failure, it goes to DMARC and Inceptis. And if it's a spam issue, it goes to spam and inceptisecure.com. So that's an example of that. And then DKIM records, these usually come out of your email system. So when you're setting up, your email and you're doing all this, like especially Microsoft 365, there's a way to go check that domain. And when you look at that domain, you can see the records that it's needed for these types of things. They might not have DMARC, but they're absolutely going to have SPF and DKIM in there,
Mm-hmm.
to check. And DKIM is that key. So you get that key from Office 365 or Google Cloud Services, or, you can load a shim that installs on Exchange, to do that natively from a local Exchange server as well. So, that's an example of that RSA key that's going out, and that'll match the private key that gets sent. So.
Got it. Got it. So let's get to maybe some practical steps for immediate impact. What's top of the list
Absolutely.
here?
So
Yeah.
let's do this real quick though. Let me show you this to check at home. So this is kind of important. If you have your company or your business, MX Toolbox is such a great site to go through to check on these records in here. And
And
if you
let
can
me clarify.
see,
You said MX as an X-ray, right? MX
yep,
Toolbox. All
Michael
right.
X Ray
Got it.
Toolbox.com, correct. And that, gives you a console that you can look at and those sorts of things. So down here, you can look up the MX record of this, and this is where you're supposed to send email to Incepta Secure. This shows the record that
Mhm.
points to where that email is going. And we use Microsoft 365, so you can see that in there when it runs, and it'll pop up. I think I have one down here already. But the next one that you could do is search for the DMARC record. And that's what I did here. And this is the
Mhm.
response from the DMARC record of how I have it. And it tells you what it is. And it even gives you a description of what each of these things are because it has a P tag. It's a policy to apply email that fails the DMARC text. So
Okay.
valid response is quarantine, which is where we want it to go. You can either do quarantine, none, or reject. The reject, and that's what I was talking about. It might not even take the email. If it fails any of that, it just blocks it entirely, right? And then where, if there's a response or receivers or forensic receivers, where is it going to send that feedback to? And for us, it's DMARC and spam at, those types of
All right.
things. So the
So,
next thing we look at here,
well, let me back up. Just most legitimate email senders, right, are going to pass these tests, right? Their emails will get through.
well, if you're green lighted in all of these and you've checked it and you've set up an SPF record properly and you're sending all of those different things, you might be okay. But sometimes they don't have a DMARC record. The SPF doesn't include constant contact. It's not complete.
Hmm.
Their marketing emails that they're spending a ton of money doing and sending them out might not be in there, and they might not even be received by that end user. Those types of things. So we gotta really pay attention to those things because if you don't have them in there, it's not going to get through. And
So,
people probably won't notice because unless the marketing people realize, hey, I'm not receiving these emails, and why is that?
right. And you don't know, it's like the tree falling in the woods, right? No one there to listen.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
And that's kind of like the quarantine actions and the rejects. We don't really know they're happening, and that's why we have those other records, those DMARC records that send it back, those aggregate reports back to those email addresses. So that way we can see those
so
things.
many SMBs need some guidance through this, right? Like
This is
from
a
Inceptus, right?
This has been a problem for a long time, and it's been coming for about a year and a half now. And when Google clipped over, probably about 6 months ago, I believe, that's when we started realizing, especially the SMB space. We notice a lot of these people don't have these records. If you don't have them, your email is not getting to its destination because they're trying to squash spoofing. So
Yep. And that's business impacting now, right?
absolutely, this is
Clients, your
absolutely
customers, your
impacting some of
suppliers
our
are not getting your emails
right.
and you can't explain it. Well, it's time to call somebody.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's our SPF records. These are what I showed you. And if you go in MX Toolbox, see how it breaks it out. These are
Hmm.
allowed senders, or if they match these IP addresses, they're allowed through. Plus here's the DKIM record that I pulled up of ours right here. So here's the key, tells you
Right.
what it is. So if you want to know, so this is a really great site to go to check on your information. Here's my MX record, and here's the IP address, and you can see it's Microsoft and where it's sending it to. So,
Got it.
and all of that DMARC's published. My policies enabled. This is what you want to see. You want to see green on everything. If it's red, then you have an issue. So
Got it. Got it. Uh, John, what are some other things that I should do to help protect against email spoofing? What do our clients need to be advised about? What are some good email security tips if you were to kind of review some things here for us?
yeah, absolutely. So, of course, the other things that you need to do, that could be susceptible if you fall for one of these attacks would be, patching, making sure your systems are up to date, your software is up to date, your browser's up to date, There's a lot of different softwares that need to be brought up to date, and that's a whole other webinar that we'll talk about. But
Yeah.
you have applications that run in your system, you have your operating system, you have browsers, you have all these different things that need to be updated because there's vulnerabilities in each of these ways that they communicate, right? So that's a huge thing to keep up to date right there. But implementing MFA, and not just on your personal, I mean, not just on your business stuff that's your work tells you have to do, but across everything. I deal a lot with individuals that are hacked constantly and because they don't have MFA on their bank accounts, simple things, and they use the
Hmm.
same password across all their infrastructure. Our stuff is constantly being hammered and thrown out there on the dark web. There's not a person that will listen to this that has not been a victim of some of these, credential harvesting attacks, whether it's from a site that you've put your information on, or maybe it's yourself that's put it out there. Your information is out there. So if you keep using those same passwords on everything, they're going to get through. If you're putting MFA on that same password, that's at least a better step to stop you. But highly, you shouldn't do that. Keep
Yeah.
different passwords for everything. And that's why there's things out there, password safes, Keeper Software has one, there's a lot out there, LastPass, we all know them that are out there that help with all that type of stuff.
Right.
But,
Right.
MFA is highly important. What you said
Sure.
earlier, conducting I mean, not employee training, that's huge. That's that person, because the only weak link in an environment is its users. If you just had computers running, nothing's going to happen, right? Nothing. It takes that one person to click that link, send that file, do something that they're not supposed to where there becomes an incident, right? So employee training is highly one of the most effective things against phishing attacks and
And
those.
since we have an extra minute or two here, if an employee were to click on a malware or click on a website or a link that shouldn't be, how quickly can that spread through the organization? Oftentimes, even before anyone can do anything about it. And
Well,
I've seen some
you
statistics. So tell me what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, some of the thing that we've been dealing with a lot is credential harvesting of Microsoft 365 accounts. That's huge because you saw how easy you can tell, look up that domain, it tells you that it's Microsoft. So I already know all those types of things, that it's a Microsoft
Right.
account. They're at inceptosecure.com. You just need to figure out how they send that, front or whatever, right? That sort of thing. So, those attacks that they're doing and sending can really, affect us.
Right. I was at a conference one time and they said that the golden rule, and going back 3 or 4 years ago, was that if you could intercept a malware beginning of an attack within, and I forget what the golden rule was, within 5 minutes, say, you could stop it in its tracks. And as of early 2024, that was down to like 3 to 5 seconds before it starts moving laterally
Right.
throughout your organization.
Well, and
With
that's if it's internal, right? Like
Right.
against those external cloud services, they once they make that initial attack and they get that credential, maybe they get the MFA as well because it's a great capture landing page, that does
Mhm.
exactly what Microsoft does. Goes there, they put it in the password, it asks for the MFA. Once they do that, they grab that session. They'll immediately connect within 4 minutes. I've seen, usually it's always between that time frame to where that credential will be utilized. And if it's not configured properly in Microsoft 365, that session timeout doesn't time out for like 30
Mhm.
days or longer, I think. And
Right.
shame on Microsoft for that. But there's ways to put those in and stop that. But those harvested credentials are then sold and then utilized by a different hacker in a different location. We've dealt with an attack that started off in Georgia, ended up in San Francisco, and that's where the attack was perpetrated, to where they reinitialize that session, and in the log you can actually see that it was uh, satisfied by token is the authentication. So they already had that same token that was 2 weeks ago. They were utilizing that to connect and create havoc. They were able to get into that user's online things and send emails. Propagate to everyone. Change the passwords. That type of stuff. So.
Yeah. Before we begin to wrap up, anything else that you want to cover today before we kind of
Well,
do
let
a
me
wrap up
finish.
and
There's
key takeaways?
Yeah, there's two more things too. I know we're running out of time here, but email security is huge.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Okay.
different stuff that goes in with Microsoft and with Google and with Exchange. We use a product that we call managed email. That's how we sell it. That actually
Hmm.
integrates with Microsoft 365, puts those banners. It's literally used to target phishing attacks. and it integrates with our security awareness training program. So that way, you get confetti if you report an email that's actually fake phishing, those types of things. But, that's imperative now. There's AI technologies to look at the body of the email, looking to see if it's being business email compromised. If it's saying Bank of America, we know their IP addresses. No, we know where they come from. So if it doesn't come from that, it's already known as bad and stripped away. So they're imperative to assist with that, to help, learn and understand that organization's email thing. But, and the other thing is to implement SPF, DKIM, and DMARC successfully. So,
Right. We had set aside some time for some Q&A, and I think we're running out of time, but I do want to thank you, obviously, for jumping in here today and helping us with this. Let's wrap up a little bit, kind of key points and summary of what we can do going forward, and then how can we contact, or how can anyone who might listen to this either online or after the fact. We're going to put this up on YouTube. How can they contact Incepta Cybersecurity?
yeah, so we'll run down real quick. Email spoofing is an issue. We know what it is, what we've learned, what they look like, how to detect it, some techniques to look at that type of stuff. How is that email sent and decisions are made, and that's through SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Those are the new have-to-haves to play in the world of email that are out there that most people are missing. Small business is hyper affected with this and should really pay attention to that. You can check your records by going to mxtoolbox.com, michaelxraytoolbox.com, and from there you can put in your domain and see all those records and make that decision. If you're not right, you're going to have to edit your DNS for your domain to fit those certain things. It's automagic in Microsoft. There's a way to do it to make sure the SPF is right, but you got to add all those other sites that you might not be having, like that send emails over your ticketing systems, marketing software, those types of things for that.
Right.
And the big things for this to protect ourselves: email security, authentication, security awareness training is paramount, and antivirus, anti-malware within email, those sorts of things. Those are kind of the most critical points for that. So, and we sell all those solutions here at Inceptus, managed emails, that email protection. We do security awareness training as a service. We can help set up those organizations to link all of those together so they work in concert, to do that ultimate protection and give that reporting and statistics that you're going to need to really protect your organization and reduce that risk. So that's my 20-second wrap up.
Very good. We thank you.
And look here, we have a page too. A way for us to get in touch with us here. You can reach out to us over the email info@inceptasecure.com, and our telephone number is there, 239-673-8130. Leave a message because we get a lot of phone calls. So
great. This webinar, we're going to put it out onto YouTube after a little bit of post-event editing here and make it all nice and clean and head it out there. If you have a chance, if you're watching this off of YouTube, we welcome your calls, your inquiries. We stand by ready to help you. We've got John's credentials that he's talked about at the top of this thing. He oversees our entire operations organization, and so we stand by ready to help any organization, particularly in the SMB space, to go forward, keep your organization safe from malware and email spoofing and all the like. Anything else, John?
Nope, not at all. Have a huge stack of services, and we're ready to help you guys. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We love to educate about this topic. So thank you very much, Bill. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time today.
Bye now.